The agenda is as follows. We will first have a welcome speech by the President of the IEEE UTM Student Branch, Mr. Muzakir Din Mohammed. Then we will have a speech by Associate Professor Dr. Vinay Armugam of the University of Technology, Mauritius. This will be followed by a few words by the Chair of the Mauritian section of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, Mr. Eswaren Alagheri Chepi. The Director General of the University of Technology, Mauritius, Dr. Keith Thomas, will then deliver his guest speech. Last will be our keynote speaker, Mr. Pravish Bungi, who will dive directly into the topic of the evening. After his keynote speech, we'll take a few questions. Some ground rules before we proceed. You're all requested to keep yourself muted throughout the event. You may send your questions via chat to your host, that is myself, and these will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Our first speaker is a third-year student of the BEng Electronic Engineering program of the University of Technology, Mauritius. He has been passionate about engineering since his childhood and always wanted to use his skills to contribute to humanity. He took up the challenge to be the president of the IEEE UTM Student Branch to realize part of his dreams. Let us now listen to Mr. Muzakir Din Mohammed for his welcome address. Mr. Muzakir, the floor is yours.
Earth provides enough to satisfy
Mr. Din Mohammed, you are muted. Sorry for that. I'm sure he'll just correct it in a minute.
Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This quote from the late Mahatma Gandhi reminds us of the need to save power in our everyday life. Saving power is something which can be easily embedded in our daily lives to make the world more sustainable. However, it is also the duty of professionals and engineers to do their part. On April 22, 2008, the Power Engineering Society of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers changed its name to the Power and Energy Society to help the environment and society in terms of the electric power industry. This day has been officially commemorated as PES Day since 2018, and a group of volunteers from the energy industry come together to host various events based on the theme during the month of April. The theme for 2021 PES Day is Clean Energy Revolution. The IEEE Student chapter of the University of Technology, Mauritius, is honored to contribute to such an auspicious celebration. This student club was created within the blessing of Associate Professor Dr. Armugam, whom I would like to thank for his unfailing support. The student chapter is started with 11 members, but we are growing fast. Our core purpose is to foster technological innovation and excellence for the benefit of humanity at large. On the other side, it has helped us members go out of our comfort zone and acquire new skills. Learning, indeed, does not occur only within the four walls of a classroom or laboratory. A special word of thanks for the President of Mauritius chapter of IEEE, who has supported us throughout our journey. It is reassuring to know that we have a pool of seasoned professionals, a call away at our disposal. The pandemic has been a challenge, but engineers believe in converting challenges into opportunities. Online events have allowed us to interact with researchers, engineers, and other students throughout the world. Please allow me to thank everyone who has worked hard behind the scenes to make this event a reality. I'm confident that you will have a fruitful evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Dean Mohammed, for this warm welcome and for a description of the UTM IEEE student branch. I'm sure students who are not part of an IEEE student branch will do everything to join one in their institutions. IT professionals and engineers, there are numerous benefits for a professional to be an IEEE member as well. Allow me to introduce our next speaker. Associate Professor Dr. Vinay Armugam is a distinguished IEEE member and IEEE UTM counselor. Since 2010, he has organized more than 8 international conferences as the founder member and president of the professional body from 2013 to 2018. He was very much involved in different activities to promote universities in Mauritius. He has completed a BSc Engineering in Computer Complexes, Systems and Networks, an MSc in System Engineering, and a PhD in Telecommunications. In terms of research skills, he has published in IEEE ACM, Eurasia Journal, and Springer, which are indexed in Elsevier Scopus. He is currently supervising PhD students in the fields of artificial intelligence and blockchain education, information technology, and engineering. Dr. Armugam is a certified silver engineer and certified trainer in IPv6 network technologies and big data, respectively. He is also certified in research ethics. Finally, Dr. Armugam is an MQA registered manager and trainer at the University of Technology Mauritius and a registered bid evaluator at the Central Procurement Board. Let us now hear Dr. Vinay Armugam.
Thank you, Avi, MC. Can you hear me? Can the team hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So I will start with a small protocol. So Pravesh Vangi, our keynote speaker, Dr. Kate Thomas, Director General of the University of Technology Mauritius, Eswara Ncheti, President of IEEE Mauritius, Mr. Muzakir, President of IEEE UTM Student Branch. We have industry community, I suppose, academic and student communities. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to you all for this evening. So this April, we are celebrating what we call the Power and Energy Society Day, PES Day. And on this occasion, UTM IEEE branch is organizing a webinar on green computing with virtualization technologies. This is, in fact, a good theme in line with the current situation in Mauritius and worldwide due to COVID-19 pandemic. It is also in line with the vision and mission of our university, because we want to move to what we call Industry 4.0, Technology 4.0, and eventually University 4.0. And sustainable development is part of it. So in the field of education, across academic and practical field, the green computing has considerable significance. Ladies and gentlemen, saving energy consumption, reducing carbon emissions, cutting operating costs, and ensuring a sustainable environment have become the top priority of today's modern world. The green computing sector is a very wide variety of research activities that have been carried out in IT and educational institutions over the last few years. In educational institutions like UTM, University of Mauritius, and others, and in IT companies, electronic devices such as computers, air conditioners, and lights consume a fixed amount of electricity as well. So saving energy helps to cut costs and help incorporate green computing. And this awareness is important to universities, faculties, and students. So the IEEE Power and Energy Society scope is to embrace research, development planning, design, amongst others, for the safe, sustainable, economic storage and usage of energy. It is good to mention that this society provides a range of professional development services through programmatic branches like PES University, which offers knowledge and educational credit via webinars like this one, web-based tutorials, and plain talk. PES University also sponsors high school initiative, meetings, and conferences in the field of power and energy. So if you have time, you can just visit the PES website to know more about this university, PES University activities. So, dear friends, being the IEEE counselor, so my talk is basically on education and educational activities. So let me share with you information regarding IEEE educational activities, which you can embark. So IEEE provide learning opportunities with the engineering sciences, research, and technology. So IEEE offers educational opportunities such as, maybe some of you will not know, IEEE e-learning library, the Educational Partners Program, the Standards in Education, and also what we call the Continuing Education Units, CEU. These are online platforms. For example, the e-learning library, for example, is a collection of online educational resources, courses designed for self-paced learning. Education Partners, exclusive for IEEE members, offers online degree programs, certification, and courses at a 10% discount. The Standard in Education platform explain what standards are and the importance of developing and using them. It includes tutorial modules and case illustrations to introduce the history of standard, basic terminology, their application, and the impact on product. Book reviews, link to other sites, among others. So I talk about CEUs. So the CEU readily translates into what we call professional development hours, PDH. And one CEU is equivalent to 10 PDH. So that is very interesting for us IT specialists, engineers. So IEEE also help young people better understand engineering and how an engineering career can be part of their future. Students of even at early age, at age of 8 and above, parents, educational officers, teachers, instructors can explore the platform to prepare for an engineering career, ask expert engineering related questions. Okay, we do have that feature there. Play interactive games, explore curriculum links, and review lesson plans. Finally, through the Student Activities Committee, IEEE facilitates partnership between student activities and other IEEE entities. So these are a few information that I wanted to share with you on today's occasion. I hope that you will enjoy this online event and thank all of you for participating. I also thank the speakers, Dr. Keith Thomas, Mr. Pravesh Bangi, Mr. Chetty, and the organizing team of this event. So thank you very much, all of you. Over to you, Master of Ceremony, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oguzhan, for your ongoing patronage. We know we can always count on you. This whole event is possible because of the support of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. We are honored to have among us today the chair of the Mauritian section of IEEE. He has been an IEEE volunteer over the past 10 years, and he founded the first IEEE Mauritian chapter along with a couple of other volunteers. He has also served as an IEEE Executive Committee member and treasurer of the IEEE section. He has a BSc Honours in Software Engineering and an MSc in Computer Networking from the University of Technology, Mauritius. He has worked as an IT professional in various companies in Mauritius and is currently the head of IT for Angor Worldwide. Please welcome Mr. Iswarena Lageri-Chetty to say a few words.
Thank you for the introduction, Chair, Master Ceremony, Sir Ravi Fugwa, and University of Technology for inviting me to this event, and especially the student branches. So basically, following what the president of the student branch has said and what Dr. Armugam has said, I'll just build upon what these topic to tell you about a little bit about myself and what how IEEE has become meaningful in my day-to-day activities and my professional growth throughout my entire career and as a professional and also as a student. Yeah, 10 years back we started with a couple of members of the IEEE to initiate the first chapter, and we did that within the University of Technology itself. And today we call the University of Technology the home of IEEE Mauritius, and it has been from there that we started with the first chapters, a couple of 15 professionals that we've gathered. We decided to gather and say we are 50 members in Mauritius, but we are not doing anything as a team. So we started back some 10 years back, and over the 10 years we've been able to evolve as subsection and a section. Over the 10 years we've been organizing lots of events. We've been doing conferences, international conferences, around 5 a year. So for the past 10 years or so, maybe in a total, we've reached around 20 conferences, 25 conferences, lots of technical sponsorship for events. We've been doing the telecommunication day. We've been doing several events, and recently, up to recently, we've been having mostly web conferences, and among those, the UTM student branch is holding this one, and we're having the University of Mauritius student branch organizing activities as well on their side. And today, we are proud that we've added over last year one major affinity group, affinity groups, which is the Women in Engineering Society, Women in Engineering. So we're encouraging women to form part of this affinity group to help elevate engineering within the community, and to help themselves to further in their careers as women. Also, we've done over last year, we've introduced the Power Engineering Society chapter of Mauritius, and they've been organizing lots of events. Even one on Monday, they did one on smart engineering, smart power engineering, and they are doing lots of other activities as well, and we are encouraging people to join those societies and chapters. So I'll just brief a view of what IEEE for me is. IEEE has helped me achieve a lot, not because it is just the world's oldest engineering society, not also because it has got over 400,000 members worldwide, but also because it provides you with the latest technology. It has the largest digital library with regards to everything that's under technology, and technology can span all the fields that you know, from underground studies to space studies. So anything in between underground to the space is considered as a technology under IEEE. And everything we do is to enhance the technology, to enhance humanity for the benefit of all. And I'll just share my screen on a couple of slides on some of the benefits of joining the IEEE. Cool. So I think you should be able to see the screen now. And All right. So the Mauritius section is part of these IEEE branches, and we cover their. We are under the what we call the Region 8 society, which forms the basis of Europe, Africa, and Middle East. So as we are showing on the screen, we've got over 420 members, 39 technical societies. We are present in 160 countries with lots of annual conferences. In Mauritius, we do like 5, like as I mentioned before. So this is Region 8 where we are, which is also the biggest region within IEEE, which has got the most number of professional registered engineers as well. And so our branches in Mauritius consist of the student branch, UTM student branch, and University of Mauritius branch. And we've got lots of technical societies, which I've already mentioned. The PES is one among them. And we've got also the Computer Society and other things. This year, we are also trying to introduce another chapter, which will be a joint chapter with the IEEE Computer Society and robotics and AI automation, including the AI in this one. And I hope we will be successful in setting this chapter with your help, of course. There are a couple of affinity groups to which IEEE believes in, and those are the young professionals like you, consisting of students and people who just graduated and who are in their professionals as well, and in their in less than 10 years of career, they are into that young professionals affinity group. We've got the women in engineering, and we've all got also some affinity groups which deals with humanitarian activities. So basically, with the help of University of Technology student branch or the University of Mauritius student branches, we can leverage on those affinity groups, especially the humanitarian one, to bring about a positive change, I would say, in the local context, because IEEE can provide sponsorship throughout these bodies to help start engineering programs that would help a society or part of a society. Like it can be a village, it can be a town, it can be a small part of Mauritius where there is a need to leverage technology, engineering to help for the betterment and good of that region or sector. So there are lots of sponsorship which can top up to about 10,000 USDs just to promote these kind of activities. So I would encourage you guys to feel free to engage with the student branch, UTM student branch, to help us identify those places where we can contribute as professionals to help the society in general. And by society, I mean Mauritius in general. So we also got membership and standard association. So as you know, IEEE is the biggest standard association. And one among those standards that we are proud to say about, and which people relate more, is about the 802.11, which is the Wi-Fi standards. And I usually say that, okay, standards is good because it helps anyone in any world to speak the same language. So if you are using your computer in Mauritius, you can use your Wi-Fi in Mauritius. You can go in Russia and use their Wi-Fi. It won't be a problem because they are using the same standard throughout the world. And so there are lots of subscription available for people to join IEEE, and it's not just about technical subscription, but there are lots of things that happens. You get access to the world's largest library, to ebooks, conferences, articles, And there's also IEEE television, where you can subscribe and see lots of things happening. Like there's lots of popular things about 5G ongoing now, so you can have a look on those. And what is IEEE if not about collaboration? So we've got a Collaboratech platform, which is free to everyone, members and non-members. So you can join there. You will see lots of topics on engineering, from anything that you can imagine is out there. And there's a lot of people from IEEE, non-IEEE, academic, non-academic, collaborating and exchanging ideas to the betterment of what we call the advancement of technology. And one thing also that can help students is about development. So there's lots of things ongoing about education. Dr. Vinay said about STEM. STEM is one thing that actually is pushing forward, has been pushing forward, and is involving a lot of effort into that one this year and the year to come. So it ranges from anything that from a kindergarten up to a pre-university. So there's portals dedicated to that, which is free of access, which is, I'll send that into the chat. You can have a look at that, and you can encourage your young ones to form part or to see those things under what's happening under those STEM programs. And the site is tryengineering.org. So it is a free platform, and students also can benefit from IEEE through doing their CVs. They can also have access to lots of education, not just on engineering. It's also about your personal own growth, and you can have access to lots of development tools there that will help you upgrade yourself, not just on the engineering side, like I mentioned, but also on the management and other aspects as well. So there's lots of things that Professor Armugham's already said, covered about CEUs and PDH. I won't go through this, but these are accessible and at discounted rates for members. So usually it's about 10% discount on those proceeds, and some for students. I think lots of those journals and the digital library is free of charge if you join. And you've got access, of course, to lots of benefits and discounts, 50% discounts on many things as well. So that's about where you can find IEEE. We are on most of the social platforms as well, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and you can find lots of information about those as well. So I'll be sharing those links, important links into the chat, and I hope we can see much more people in joining us and helping us grow the Mauritius section and help us for the betterment of advancing technology, not just for our own benefit, but for the humanitarian, as well as promoting Mauritius to the next level. With that, I hand over to the MC, and thank you for being a participant in this organizing event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chetty. We are encouraged by the support provided by the Mauritian section of IEEE to all of us. Our next speaker was born into a Welsh language working class family in Cardiff, Wales, UK. Dr. Thomas was fortunate to receive his education in state schools with excellent teachers. Initially determined to become a lawyer, it was a summer job in a play scheme for special educational needs students that changed his life forever. After his degree in English and French, he trained as a teacher and worked in city schools in Liverpool, Manchester, and London for 13 years before moving into teacher training at the University of Hertfordshire. Here, he became a senior academic leader and completed his PhD. When running a 5.5-year training program with the Ministry of Education in Malaysia, Dr. Thomas fell in love with Malaysia and Terengganu in particular, eventually leaving the UK to set up a new faculty of education and lead a university campus. With a career spanning 35 years, Dr. Thomas sees himself as a teacher and a carer with a mission to unlock the potential of others. He's committed to mentoring, researching, and celebrating the voices and experiences of those who are underrepresented or overlooked because of their gender, heritage, or socioeconomic background. His life and career have been inspired by Richard Thomas, his father, Maya Angelou, and Sylvia Ashton-Warder. We are honored to have Dr. Thomas, the Director of the General of the University of Technology, Mauritius, address us today. Dr. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Javi, for that very nice introduction, and a very warm welcome on behalf of UTM and the Office of the Director General to all of the participants. I see that we've got 117 participants and the number keeps on going up. This is a very auspicious occasion for UTM working in collaboration with IEEE, and I welcome everybody warmly, and I know that we're all going to have a very positive and impactful session this evening. Can I thank in particular Ravi Fugwa and Associate Professor Dr. Mugam and Muzakia Iswaran and Pravesh as well. I haven't had the privilege to meet Muzakia Iswaran and Pravesh in person, but I'm looking forward to achieving that when we resume our face-to-face work. I'm just going to say a few words about my commitment to IEEE. And to my absolute shame, when I came from Malaysia, where I was running a big education program and came to take up the helm of UTM, I'd never even heard of IEEE. And it was because I think of the courage and the commitment of my colleagues at UTM, who very, very soon came to my office and they introduced me to the world of IEEE, I think in the first few weeks of my arrival. And I'm always very grateful for the colleagues in site for doing that, because that really did open my eyes and my ears and has helped very much in providing something of the strategic direction for the university. We cannot work as a university in isolation. We have to work in partnership with organizations and societies such as the IEEE, and I'm very grateful to the student branch at UTM for being so active, especially during this period of confinement, which has been taken as a period of opportunity to connect so many people together. And I see that the numbers are growing as I speak. We're up to 118. So congratulations to all of the organizing members and a warm welcome to all the participants. The reason that I'm so committed to IEEE is because of what it represents. And I have just written such a lot of notes in my notebook. I know when I've got a good speaker, and when S. Warren was talking and I was looking at his slides, I always know that when my pencil is going, because I'm very old school when it comes to thinking, I still think with a pencil. But I've written a number of things there that not only are because I'm learning even more about IEEE, but because one of the things that IEEE models to us is the importance of global and international and local connections. And I was very taken with S. Warren's background. He has a particular space age background, which I would just draw everybody's attention to, because as I'm looking at that background, just to the right-hand side, there's a kind of map of the world with lots of lines and sparks and kind of energy and communicating lines. And I think that represents what this endeavor, what IEEE is about. It's about making those global connections. Particularly from a small island state like Mauritius, we need to be very, very, very determined to make those global and international connections. Otherwise, people will forget about us and will overlook us. Mauritians are not easy to forget and are not easy to overlook. It's a nation of people who travels internationally, travel very widely. And we know that the Mauritian diaspora is something that the country can be very proud of. IEEE is another way for Mauritius to have an international set of connections and for knowledge and new discovery, particularly in the areas of energy, efficiency, green technologies, IT. There is a real role for Mauritius to not only be part of that discourse, but to take a lead in it and have an international impact. There is so much good work that happens in Mauritius in that area, and IEEE, again, is the place where it can form as a hub, a network, and a disseminating organization to bring people together, but to disseminate and share new knowledge. One of the things that I often talk about is the importance of language in everything that we do. And I never miss an opportunity as an English teacher and as somebody who's very proud of being multilingual. I never miss an opportunity to celebrate and to foreground the importance of language in all that we do. Moi-même, je parle couramment français. Il y a longtemps, j'ai été professeur de français en Angleterre. Mais pour moi, c'est la première fois que j'ai eu l'occasion de travailler dans la langue française. And I'm much easier actually in my Welsh language, in my home language. And I would love to be able to do my business sometimes in the language of Welsh. But Welsh is not an international, it's not a global language. There is one small community of people in Argentina, in Patagonia, who do speak Welsh because Welsh people went there. But we're very reliant on our big cousin, the English language, for our main lingua franca and our way of communicating. But one of the things that's an opportunity for us in Mauritius is to use our multilingualism to great effect. I very often take part in webinars, and this is one of the things that the pandemic has been a learning opportunity for me. And many of the webinars that I'm invited to as the Director General take place or are based or come out of India. And what's so fantastic if you go into an Indian webinar is the way that my colleagues in India slip in and out of 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 languages with great confidence, and everybody just keeps up. The last one I attended was addressed by the Minister of Education in India, and the first 45 minutes was in Hindi, and there was no apology for that. It was just how it was, and we had to keep up. And it's remarkable how much in 45 minutes you can understand if you really pay attention and use the languages that we have, but also our knowledge of things like Bollywood films in order to make sense of what was going on. And I would invite IEEE to really celebrate the unique Mauritian aspect of our branch, our student branch at UTM, and to be very proud of the multilingual way in which we communicate. As I logged on to the webinar earlier on, and my colleagues are all getting ready, they were talking, and then when they saw me coming in, they code switched. And that's what happens. We all do that out of politeness. But I always encourage people to speak in the language that is in their heart. And then obviously we adjust to some professional shifting and code shifting. But it is something that I would put on the table for us to really be as inclusive as possible in our IEEE work at UTM, to ensure that people are engaged not just in the mind, but in the heart. The work of IEEE is something which can only be successful if people engage in it with the heart. I'll give you one example, and I was sharing this earlier as we logged on this evening. In my home language, there is only one word for blue and green. It's the same word. So when we're talking about blue ocean strategy, we're talking about blue technology, we're talking about green technology. In Welsh, we use the same word, it's glass. So that can be very confusing. But it just illustrates that in order for us to really have ownership of the key concepts, we have to have linguistic ownership of those concepts, and they have to be part of our heritage, and they have to be based on our experience. There is a lot for an organization like IEEE to take leadership on, and I'm very proud that the students at UTM, as part of this branch, are so active and they're so well led and inspired by my colleagues in UTM, Mr. Hafi-Fugwa, Dr. Amugam, Dr. Dikitra, Mr. Nasu. There's a lot of colleagues who who really give inspirational leadership, because these are colleagues who are very well connected themselves. They stay internationally relevant. They're all engaged in high-level research, and that influences their work as lecturers, as teachers, but also as members and supporters of IEEE. So I'm very grateful in the past 18 months, just how my knowledge of IEEE has grown exponentially, and I will continue as the Director General to put IEEE as a central part of the university strategy that we're currently working on. And I'm always very willing to support IEEE, to support the students in this very important aspect of our work in Mauritius and globally. So I wish the event every success and officially open the workshop. So thank you very much, colleagues, and back to our MC for the evening, Mr. Habib.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for these inspiring and heartfelt words. We have now reached the key part of this webinar. Our keynote speaker has an engineering degree in electronic and communication engineering from the University of Mauritius and a master's in computer security and forensics from the University of Technology, Mauritius. He has a wide experience in IT and telecommunications industry at national and international level. He's currently a learning and development consultant at an international telecommunications services organization and also lectures at the University of Technology, Mauritius. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Mr. Pravesh Bungi, for his speech on green computing with virtualization technologies.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ravi, MC, and thank you, organizing committee for student branch of UTM for having me here today. I'm going to share my screen, and well, just before starting officially, I will just mention two points. Well, first is a powerful storytelling that Dr. Thomas has said, and I take one example from his saying regarding the webinar of 45 minutes conducted in a foreign language for him. So piecing out the actions and then taking anecdotes from Bollywood movies must not have been an easy task. I don't see a one-to-one correlation here. So that's something that I may use for an icebreaker for my next sessions. And another takeaway from Eswaran's presentation is that IEEE does recruit us from kindergarten level. Actually, I have a 3-year-old to manage in lockdown, which is not easy. So I will go and look what are the activities that IEEE proposes and advises. Okay. Just putting the screen on full screen. So today we are going to talk about green computing with a focus on virtualization technologies, how virtualization helps green computing and enables us to use less energy. So the agenda is simple. We're going to introduce the concept of green computing, which is already here, which is already being used today. Some key facts, and why do we use green computing? Why is it of so much interest today? And how virtualization helps towards achieving the objectives of green computing. So without much ado, we talk about the 3 tenets of green computing. First one is we have computing devices almost everywhere. They have invaded our life. In today's world, we talk about pervasive computing, ubiquitous computing. We even have computers embedded within clothing. I'm talking about the IoT devices that have certain form of computing ability, and they are part of our lives. But if we look at 20 years from now, we didn't have so much reliance on technology, on computing devices. Today, they are everywhere, and this is going to be the trend going future. So we also have the second tenet, which is a power efficiency. These devices, they consume power, and they are emitting certain form of heat, energy in the atmosphere. So when we were going to talk about the power efficiency, we are not going to consider only the device while it is in use. We are going to see the big picture of the device, the whole ecosystem about how the system, how these devices came into being. And finally, what happens when we are done with the device, when it is no longer useful, when it's broken, or it's no longer technologically responsive. So it doesn't meet our new demands. What do we do? In most cases, such devices often land up in landfills. So they are discarded. So the big objectives of green computing, they are close to any objective of the green ecosystem. It is to reduce the material burdens that we have. So these devices, as they are, when they are useful, we are keeping it in our premises. When they are no longer useful, we are disposing them. So what is the harm they are creating to the environment? And while they are still in use, what is the emission of carbon dioxide? What is the carbon footprint to the environment? Then secondly, the devices themselves. They have an energy burden associated, which means they are consuming power. They are consuming power to produce something. If we have a better device that can use less power to do the same thing, we should consider using the better device, a more power efficient one, rather than the one that is consuming more energy. And also, while we are embarking on the green energy journey, there is often a conception that if we go towards a eco-friendly device, it's not going to deliver the same performance as something that is conventional. That's not true in all cases, and certainly not in the case of virtualization. Well, the objectives of green IT are to meet the performance level achieved with conventional computing. In some cases, as we will see later, the performance benefits are actually better when we use virtualization technologies. Now, we just look at some of the facts that we had based on the last 15 years. In 2008, when we had the revolution of mobile phones becoming smart and reduced, we had 139 million of devices that were produced in that year, during that year only. Fast forward to 9 years later, this amount of devices, the new devices that were shipped worldwide, increased more than tenfold. The amount is now 2.16 billion. In 2018, only the smartphones that were produced in that year exceeded 1.5 billion. Now, these figures, I took it from Forbes, and these figures are from the official manufacturers of devices. We also have manufacturers that are not registered by the ITU, and they don't provide the figures. So let's look at the official figures. So where will these devices end up when their usage is completed? We don't see any devices that are still in use from 2008 now. So this 139 million are probably sitting in some landfills. When we see these figures, we can see that more people have access to a mobile phone than access to safe sanitation currently in 2021. And with IoT devices multiplying, these figures will increase much more. What's also an issue is that some big countries, I take the US only, for example, the federal laws allow the exportation of e-waste. So in 2010 only, a study by Greenpeace revealed that there were around 54 trillion of cubic e-waste that were exported abroad. So there is a certain potential for reuse, but it's not the way that it should be managed. So now let's look at the devices themselves, the full ecosystem of how a computing device came into being. First, the device had to be manufactured in plants, in industries, which themselves cost energy. So if we know that we are creating a device that is not going to be power efficient, it's a waste right from the first stage. And secondly, when we move to operations, so the device has been shipped and now it is in it is starting to be useful. It is starting to be used. The efficiency of the device does not stay the same over the years. It decreases, and sometimes when we had more load, it can consume more electricity. So there is an energy burden associated while the device is in active use. and this will likely vary over with time. And finally, the device is disposed of when its life cycle is finished. There are certain devices where we harness components to reuse them, to recycle them, but still there is a large percentage of materials, hazardous materials that end up in landfills. When we look at a PCB board, which is a major component of computing device, there is a plastic polymer, but not only the plastic polymer, there are a lot of harmful materials that are also etched on the PCB. Well, before going into the list of materials that we often dispose of, let's look at the energy and environmental impact that we have with normal equipment that are normally found in households or in office environments. So ranging from the coffee machine up to screens and computing devices, all of them are going to consume certain amount of power, whether they are idle or they are active. Okay, so this chart is just indicative to provide you a picture of a device, even when it is it is not being used, it is not being used actively, it is still consuming a certain amount of low power, multiplied by the amount of the devices that we have. And today, we have a democratic access to computing devices. They are everywhere. So even these low power amounts of powers multiplied by the large number of devices are going to end up costing a lot and having a toll on the energy impact. If we look at the materials that are composed in the computing devices today, there's a large part of metal, but we still have lead, which is causing pollution. We have trace amount of zinc, aluminum, cadmium, and plastics. There are some of them which can be easily recycled into other uses, maybe not computing devices, but channeled to other uses. So green IT, green computing is considering to reduce the footprint of whatever computing devices are going to produce. And if we don't stop and think about, manufacturers don't stop and think about what are the devices they are created and where will these devices will be most likely when their usage, their lifetime is over. This merits careful consideration, and this is where the green computing and the ITU, also International Telecommunications Unit, provides some clear guidelines on how to manage them. With green computing, we have multiple objectives. It can be achieved in a number of ways. Materials that can be recycled would be collected and recycled. We have adopted some new ways of working, of computing, such as cloud and virtualization. We have green servers that are combining heat and power into a same system, so that the heat energy that is being generated can be reused in chillers and in other forms into the data centers themselves, into the servers themselves. Combining the efficiency, maintenance, and monitoring. These are all types of green computing that are currently being used and enforced. We will focus more on virtualization, which is a technology that is behind cloud and which is allowing us to manage a power problem and also manage a disposal problem. So what's virtualization all about? What do we mean when we talk about virtualization? If we look at a conventional computing unit, a conventional computer, it has a single device on which there is an operating system, and we add up our applications to use it. Moving on to a virtual environment, we have an abstraction of the logical functions of a computing device. What do we need from a computing device? We need a platform to be able to run our applications. This is how we interact with a computer. So if we remove this functionality, we decouple the hardware from the application side. So the computing instance can exist in an abstraction. So this is called a virtual machine. So in case of a computer, it can act as a physical platform on which we will emulate different virtual devices, virtual machines that act as system abstractions. And each of these abstractions can provide computing capabilities. So it's more like we have divided the functionality of a computer into different parts, and these parts can be independently managed and independently respond to tasks. When we look at virtualization, so in a big sphere like this, it is doing emulation of a computing device on a physical platform. Now, we may have different types of virtualization. There are different vendors on the market that are providing ways of doing virtualization. But why do we need it? Why do we do it? Why do we create virtual machines on a physical server if at the end it's a physical machine that needs to be powered on? This is because virtualization, having multiple VMs will respond to different needs. If without virtualization, these needs would have to be managed individually by different computing devices. So we are doing the work of multiple devices using a single physical machine. This is what is meant by the decoupling of functionalities. And if we are using applications, let's say, well, in any applications that you use currently on a computer system, in a virtualized environment, you are able to run different types of operating systems on a single PC. We don't have a single type of virtualization. Actually, there are different types that are going to be used in different environments. So some of the common types of virtualization, we have applications, virtualization server, storage, network, desktop, and presentation. I'm going to elaborate on some of them that are mostly used in systems today. Let's talk about the desktop virtualization. When we are using a single machine, most of you are using your laptops, you have your desktop environment where you have all your applications that are you're working on it. If for whatever reason your device become unusable, okay, you will need to have a replacement device, so you will have another desktop, and which have to be configured again in the environment that you're used to. Or if you're in an office and everybody requires to have the same set of applications, same set of backgrounds and configurations, well, a desktop virtualization would be quite useful, because you will use your physical device as a platform to connect to a remote environment. This remote environment can be standardized. So even if your device is lost, you can use another device, connect, and again, access your desktop, which with the files, with everything that you have worked, let's say, so it allows you flexibility of movement. If I have to recruit, for example, a remote worker, somebody in Canada, and provide him the same access, the same environment to which I'm using, I can just deploy a desktop virtualization and provide him the access. Using his terminal, he will be able to access the virtual desktop. If his physical machine is compromised, there is no security risk, because virtual environment provided will have its credentials managed from the platform from which it is. It's not saved on the local device. Okay, and the access is seamless from multiple devices. We have another example of application virtualization. A good example of application virtualization is Office 365 that Microsoft has deployed. When we install an application on a physical machine, the applications is going to consume certain amount of resources on the machine. It will consume certain amount of storage on the disk volume, certain amount of memory to run, and if I have a different machine, I have to install it again. Okay, so my favorites will not be installed. And these applications, traditional applications, they're also well, they're not agnostic, they're not platform agnostic. So if you have to install it on Windows, you have to use a Windows version. If you have to use it on Linux, you use the Linux version. Even sometimes 32-bit and 64-bit applications require specific versions to run. With a virtualized application, it is truly platform agnostic. You access it from a web page, and whatever system you're using a Windows, a Mac, and a Linux machine, Office 365 works the same way. For those of you who are using Office 365, you can see that as how it works. Or it's a virtual application, and you have the same set of functionalities as if it was physically installed on your machine, but without the burden, without it requiring resources to run on your machine. We then also have server virtualization. So without server virtualization, for each of the applications we needed to have a different set of server. Back in the days, emails would require a big SMTP server to be set up and configured. Application servers are separate. It was best to separate email servers from file and print servers, just for the sake of having redundancy in the system. And in this picture here, we have a big blue funnel. But before going into virtualization, when we have these different kind of servers, we needed more equipment to be able to manage that, because there is different loads. These servers are going to generate traffic. Each one has a different load, and this load has to be balanced on the network side. So besides our traditional network connectivity, we need load balancers to ensure that there is connectivity every time. Back in the days, we would remember when we sent an email having, let's say, over 10 mega size attachment, it would stay in the outbox for 1 hour before being able to find a channel to go. But today, with virtualizations, all these different servers doing specific functions can be virtualized in a single machine. And this machine, we don't even need to keep it on site. We can put it in the cloud and just have a connectivity to it. Because when we have each of these devices in a single room, every kilowatt of power used would require a certain amount of cooling, because these are going to, if they are in the same environment, they're going to cause the temperature to rise, and we need appropriate cooling to run. So we are shifting an energy burden, and we are adding in another energy burden on top. To run these computing devices, we are requiring ACs to run at full capacity. So we are just decoupling it if we are going to use numerous servers. With virtualizations, there is no such issues. All the servers and functionalities can be met. And in case I have to cater for more people to join, my business is expanding, or I have opened another campus, with virtualization, it is simple. Scalability is just a matter of going to the console and doing a few clicks. But in the conventional model, you have to ship the hardware, connect, get the person on board to connect the physical device in your machine, set up all your security policies and management. So virtualization helps here and provides more benefits. We also have the network virtualization, which is quite an innovative field in networking, where we are able to virtualize a function of networking devices and enlarge network ecosystem. When we talk about networking, it is a connectivity to a wide area network, or to the internet. When we look at it in an enterprise level communication, they are not only the routers that are involved. We often have the physical servers, the switches, the physical firewalls, the security equipment, load balancing, message routers. So on a customer side, behind an ATM, for example, you would see these devices. You would see not only the access points, the routers, there would be the physical firewalls, the security devices present. and all of them would require power. So you can have a lot of equipment on each site. With network function virtualization, all these functions are abstracted and run as a program in the cloud. Actually, if we take one of the models of network virtualization, which is OpenFlow and software-defined networking, the decision-making, the brains of the network are stored in a layer, in a control layer, in a controller, and are stored in the cloud. And the devices that are present, they are just to provide connectivity, and they just follow the instructions, whatever the brain is telling. So to forward this information packet from point A to point B, they will do it. They don't take any decisions. All the decisions are managed from the brain. And since the brain is currently not on the device itself, but it is sitting on top, it has a complete view of the network. It can sense congestions before they can happen. So network management and control is easier. And this is what we call orchestration and automation, because we can automate adding of points in the network. If we have to grow the network, adding more branches, there is less configuration involved. We can just take the device as it is, take a new device, just plug it and play it, because its role would be only to forward packets based on the decisions it will receive from the controller, from this independent software application where the network functions will be run. Okay, and we go into storage virtualization. Storage virtualization, where we had previously, well, I'm talking about myself, I had the bad habit of storing important documents on my local PCs or on local storages. Okay, after I lost critical information, this allowed me to move towards well, online storage and web storage. Storage virtualization works in this way. Instead of having a centralized container for storage, you keep it in a cloud storage where the actual container is not in one place, is not in one server. The information that you store can be broken down and placed in different servers. And these servers are going to replicate the data. They have their own forms of redundancy, and the data is backed up, and it is also stored in multiple places. What we have here is hypervisor. It's a term for a technological well, component in virtualization that is allowing us to host the cloud platforms, the virtual machines we see as the VMs. So our storage is broken down, and for the user view, he's going to see it from the top, and he sees his storage in different VMs as he has defined it. If I have defined only one storage, I can see only one VM, and I will find my my components there. It is similar to OneDrive or Google Drive or iCloud, as you can see it. You see from the top, you see your VM, so your storage drive, but behind that, you don't know where the data actually is. It can be split up in multiple parts, and these parts may be stored in data centers in Singapore, in Europe, in India, and they are backed up, so periodically backed up. So I have a central I can manage the different storage that I have. So this avoids me the need to keep a physical SAN storage device on board here that is going to add up to the equipment overhead that I will have, while not providing the efficiencies that I would hope for. So coming back to the three tenets of green computing, where we had the eco-friendly, the power efficiency, and recycle. With virtualization, we were able to reduce the amount of equipment that is actually physically needed on a particular site. So there is less hardware overhead, and it allows us the opportunity to grow without adding more equipment. So we can really say that we are able to do more with less. In terms of power efficiency, fewer components means the amount of kilowatt hours that we are going to consume can be properly managed and can be reduced compared to if we had to had physical instances of these devices. In data centers, the efficiency of the data centers that are running, we are not having devices that are running at 10% of their capacity. In data centers, we have devices that are operating at more capacity. So it means that the power efficiencies that we have, we are achieving is better. And we are very judicious with the amount of waste that is being generated. So there is a constant of filtering of waste from these devices. The e-waste, the materials can be collected and reused. And there is a proper procedure for dumping hazardous components, how to sanitize them before dumping them, and certainly not end up in landfills. And besides that, green computing is now providing us with certain better advantages compared to traditional computing. As we have seen in certain cases, the performance is better, and it's also more secure because physical systems have to be physically secured, and this policies has to be applied for the number of physical devices we have. For virtual, it's a centralized policy management for security. We can scale up and scale down without major difficulties, without having to increase the power burden. And certainly the systems is redundant. In case we have to plan a disaster recovery because of an outage, it's simple. If we're operating in a virtual environment and something happens in Mauritius, we can easily just set up another company with the same objectives in some part of Africa. So we can hit the ground running rather than having to start everything from scratch. Okay, so that is it for me. How green computing helps with is achieved with virtualization, and how virtualization can relate to reducing the amount of energy waste and our overall carbon footprint in the environment. So I thank you all for attending this talk, and I hope that you have found it interesting. I provide the floor back to MC for the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bangui, for such an inspiring speech. I'm sure everyone has been sensitized about power saving and the role virtualization technologies play in making the world a better place. We will now be taking some questions from the audience, so everyone can type in their questions in chat, and we will try to have Dr. Mugan read up the questions, and Mr. Bangui will try to provide some answers to the questions that have been raised.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, MC. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So what we are going to do is we are going to I'm going to read some questions, maybe 4 or 5. We will read that for Pravesh to answer. For the remaining question, what we are going to do is we will answer all the questions, but we will send them to the audience via mail. Is that okay, Ravi?
Yes, fine, sir.
Okay, okay. So the first question we receive is as follows. Pravesh, with virtualization, there are many data centers providing the suitable host. The question is, are we not simply transferring the energy burden to those data centers?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you.
It's a very good question, in fact. Yes, yeah.
Well, when we have multiple machines doing a single specific task, they are not running at full capacity. They are perhaps running at 10%, 15% of their computing capacity. Let's say we have 10 devices, each well, operating at 10 to 15% of their capacity. all these devices, if they're running on a single server in a data center, the server may be running at 80% capacity and fulfilling all the tasks that these devices are doing, and also catering for needs for other computing needs. So it's like if we look at in the overall value chain, the single server would be more power efficient than having the multitude of devices that are doing a fractional part of the time while consuming the same amount of energy. So it's not a zero sum, but the server will be operating at better power efficiency. That is, it's going to deliver more for the amount of power that is consuming.
Okay, Eshwaren, you want to tell something?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you can also, maybe answer the question.
Yeah, being also in this IT environment and work for over 15 years now, the tendency is to think that we are shifting the power to the data center, and they have got more servers than we, and those data center will be requiring more electricity, generating more heat, energy, and so on. But the way that those data centers are designed, they are in an efficient way. They are not just running the virtualization proficiently and efficiently. They also have inbuilt solutions that would take out the heat and regenerate the heat, dissipate the heat properly at a very lower cost than what you would have in your own data center. The capacity they have, the way they set things and the way they are using energy, some like Google's are having their own, producing their own electric energy to sustain their own data centers, and the way they circulate their air and make the air conditioning efficient, it helps reduce the power consumption of those servers, which you will not be able to attain on a local server. And it's very, very costly from what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Eshwaren. I will read the second question, Pravesh. So, if we run computing systems with clean energy, is it really green computing?
Okay, well, I can understand where this comes from. Green energy is generating energy from renewable sources, but whatever we do from it, it doesn't affect the name. We produce green energy, but if we are going to do it doing traditional computing, it's not green computing. It is computing using green energy.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Third question: how does security factor in with green IT? So every time in any system, organization look at the security factors. They invest a lot on security issues to protect systems. So in this case, so how does security factor in with green IT?
Well, when we say green IT, let's talk about the virtualization part, where it addresses security in almost all the types of virtualizations that we have, because security is configured in the root instance, in each of the VMs, in each of the virtual machines that are being virtualized. We have it's configured inherently with security. We have looked at the example of desktop virtualization. So if somebody loses his physical device that he used to connect to the remote desktop, and another person gets hold of the device, he still cannot enter the virtual desktop environment without the credentials. So security is well managed in virtualization. And when we look at those aspects of green computing, they are energy dependent. So it's not on the usage part. So there is no part of the security involved. And lastly, let's say we had the devices on board and somebody got in the premises and tampered with the devices. Well, users of the devices would not get access to the computing resource that they need, and it will be a security breach. With virtualization, the equipment is not here. It is in somewhere in the cloud. It is virtualized. So attackers who want to physically access the system or disrupt the system don't have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Fourth question, I think it concerns one of your slides. When using a single computer with multiple VMs activated, metrics definitely show heavy usage of CPUs, RAM, and other resources. So how does we deal with the energy burden in this case?
Okay, so this is often the case when we run like softwares like VirtualBox or Oracle or VMware. Yeah. We have multiple host machines on our PC. It will likely trigger heavy usage on our PC because our PC is a host machine. The VMs are consuming resources on our PC. But let's isolate these requests separately. If we didn't do it as in a virtualized environment, and let's say we had 4 VMs and we run 4 different machines to do each of these tasks, the combined power usage of these 4 machines and the emission of these 4 machines would outweigh the resource and the emission of one single machine, even if it is running at full capacity. This is an economies of scale that happens. And if we scale it up to 1,000 VMs like the servers are doing in a data center, it's the power advantage is much more beneficial there. It's much more perceptible there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I will take one last question. I'm seeing from the chat we are receiving more questions, but we will answer. Don't worry, guys. So in the Mauritian context now, okay, so are there any initiatives in Mauritius for green computing and virtualization? Since you are from OBS, maybe you're the better person to answer to us.
Well, in Mauritius, the private institutions are already doing it. They have already adopted green IT. There are certain norms that they have to do. For the local authorities, the National Computer Board, NCB, came up with a framework to roll out green IT in the administration, in the government administration. So the framework is there. There is the deployment that has not started yet. And currently, we are amidst budget negotiations for 2021 for Mauritius. And the Ministry of Finance has a regular exercise of taking inputs from academic, from professionals. Maybe they won't hear from us, but coming from the DGs, they would certainly heed his words about adopting a green IT in campuses and how to reduce our footprint.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pavesh. Ravi, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Bangui, for these clarifications. Thank you all for your active participation in this webinar. Due to time constraints, we are not able to address all the questions. However, each and every question that you have asked in the chat will be addressed in an FAQ page, which will be sent to all the registered users. Also, a digital certificate will be sent to the email you shared when you registered for this event. A recording of the webinar will also be made available to you as well. Thank you to all the speakers and participants. I wish you all the best. Good night and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Ravi. Thank you, DG. Thank you, Pavesh.
Excellent. Everyone. What an excellent event. Thank you. Congratulations. Really good. And thank you, Monsieur Pravesh. You're an excellent teacher. Honestly, that was a stunning presentation. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.